John and I recently changed from toothpaste to tooth powder.
It's a weird change.
It's supposedly supposed to be better because I'm like on this kick where like I'm replacing all of our toxic things with like more, healthy, health conscious things. And like anything with like toxic ingredients, like I'm trying to swap out. So I was like, oh, I didn't realize toothpaste had like additives, you don't think about those things.
Right.
And I was like, oh, tooth powder? Okay, interesting. So I ordered some. And John, how do we feel about it? This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like birds.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring. I would like to go back slightly when Ash is saying, we're going to switch to tooth powder. I was like Dwight Schrute? Like, because he has tooth powder? And I'm like, who are we? Are we having tooth powder? Are we living with George Washington, like that era of people? Or are we like using a toothbrush with horsehair and stuff like that? But as a supportive husband, I said, sure, let's try it out. And I'll tell you how it's been going. Every night, I go to sleep with the taste of dirt in my mouth.
But here's the thing. This is why it applies to our podcast, okay? Because it does taste like dirt. It literally is like putting dirt in your mouth. And so we were looking at the ingredient list, and it says bentonite clay. Uh-huh. And we're like, bentonite clay is like that slippery goop that you drive through in Capitol Reef National Park when you're going back into Cathedral Valley. It's like, we know what bentonite clay is.
There's a lot of fossils in bentonite clay.
Surely it's not meant for our mouths.
Little did we know, though. Turns out we're crunchier than we thought we were. We're using bentonite clay and dirt as toothpaste.
It's supposed to be mint flavored, but it definitely is dirt flavored.
Yes.
With a hint of mint.
Yes. So that's been the thing.
Here's the thing about it, though. My teeth do feel cleaner.
They feel cleaner and less sensitive.
As sensitive. So I think it's working. But it's just like every single time I use it, I'm just like, puh, puh, puh. I'm like, gross. What is this? Why am I putting bentonite clay in my mouth?
Yeah. And it's something we're doing.
So will we continue? We're not sure. But it's National Park tooth powder.
Right.
So that's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool. And we'll see how long we continue brushing our teeth with dirt. We may or may not continue. Updates to come. I'm sure you're all waiting on bated breath.
You can message us or leave in the reviews if you also use tooth powder and think it's gross. We'd love to hear your response to this.
When you respond, if you're responding in the affirmative, also let us know if you drive a horse and buggy as your commuter vehicle. And if you powder your face and wear a white wig, that would be preferable. All of those things would like to be included in your response.
So good. You know what else is so good? Fun facts for Great Sand Dunes National Park.
I actually have a segue for what you were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of dirt, sand... I'm really excited to talk about today's National Park episode.
What a segue.
Yeah.
So good.
Great Sand Dunes National Park, which could eventually be known as some type of tooth powder.
Yeah. We should start a line.
great sand powder.
National Park tooth powders.
Yeah. It's a great way to lose a lot of money, I think.
Oh, we love Great Sand Dunes. It's so great. So go listen to our Exploring Great Sand Dunes episode if you want to know more about like the specific activities to do in this park.
Right.
And kind of how we like to put our trips together to come here. Today is not about those things as much.
No, today is all about the fun facts, some of the really interesting things about this place that make it so cool. But there's also another reason why I'm excited to talk about this episode, is because it's going to allow me to get something off my chest.
Oh.
And several episodes ago, Ash revealed that she hates book jackets, and she kind of got that off her chest.
I will say that time and time again.
Yes, exactly. But getting that off her chest, it immediately reminded me of one of my favorite random people on YouTube.
Okay.
His name is Roll, and he is an ancient Greek warfare historian.
Okay.
And Insider invited him on to review a whole bunch of ancient battle scenes in movies. Well, if you watch the video, he's just hilarious because battle after battle and movie after movie, Roll keeps having the same complaint about all of these battle scenes where are the ditches? If you're under siege, where's your ditch? Where's your ditch? You got to have a ditch, you know? And he keeps rating all of these movie scenes 1 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 2 out of 10. They're all unrealistic. Do you want their war machines and their siege towers to roll right up to your defensive walls, people? Come on, you got to have a ditch. And so, anyways, it's just super funny because he became known as the ditch guy.
Okay.
And like, it's people invited him on all different types of videos to just talk about ancient warfare and to complain about ditches, which I think is just super funny. And your book jackets kind of reminded me of that. And the guy Roll actually has nothing to do with where I just thought it was worth mentioning because.
Well, yeah, I was like, you didn't say anything to get off your chest.
Right. I'm about to.
Oh, okay.
I'm just telling you, you reminded me of something.
Oh, okay.
Because you're like Roll and I want to be like Roll. We should all try to be like Roll. We should all have like a pet peeve that just bothers us. Like, that's why pet peeves are funny, because they're something small that bothers us way more than it should. Mm-hmm. Your book jackets.
It drives me crazy. I have a book jacket like laying on the floor out in the other room right now because I have the stupid book jacket.
It's in timeout.
It will be reinstated when I'm done with the book.
Yes. Okay. So to my pet peeve, I guess to what I want to get off my chest, I'll kind of work into it a little bit. But Ash, you probably know that I love maps. Mm-hmm. Old ones, new ones, maps that have monsters, maps that are incomplete or wrong, old maps from explorers, subway maps, all these different things. If you look through my Facebook, you'll see like the algorithm just feeds me map content. Like favorite Jell-O flavor by state, you know, and it just kind of shows you the color of Jell-O or whatever, you know, states that say soda versus states that say pop, kind of a thing, you know, all kinds of maps. But I also really like storytelling. And if you read fantasy books, you know that they usually have a map of the world that the story takes place in.
Yes.
And like Lord of the Rings, Narnia, Throne of Glass, Game of Thrones, Aragon, they all have maps. And I think they're super interesting. But after having traveled so much and having seen so much of the natural world, especially in the US, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of how natural landscapes form. My pet peeve was looking at those fantasy maps and thinking to myself, well, that's not realistic. And I used to get, it's not really a pet peeve anymore. But I used to get pretty annoyed at maps that I didn't think accurately portrayed the natural world. For example, do you know how many mountains there are on some of these maps and how few rivers there are? Like, it's nuts. The mountain to river ratio in fantasy literature maps is totally off. It's totally ridiculous. So that's my pet peeve. Because if you look at a map of the main body of the USA, the lower 48. Do you know how many rivers, like main rivers of the US, come out of just the Rocky Mountains? Like, it's crazy. You've got the Snake, the Missouri, the Green, the Yellowstone, the Colorado, the Platte, the Arkansas, the Canadian River, the Rio Grande, and more that come out of just the Rocky Mountains. And these rivers, they travel through thousands of miles of American land because of a small patch of mountains out in the West, you know. And if you look at these fantasy maps, it's just mountains, 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 and like one river and a teeny little lake. You know, it's crazy. And so I used to look at these fantasy maps and think, well, no, absolutely not. And I think that's just in the author's imagination. It's their imagination. It could never happen in real life. And sometimes I'd spend more time criticizing the map in my mind than actually reading the book. Now, a good wife would have recognized how much time I spent scowling at maps in my books and asked what was wrong. But instead, I just suffered silently.
You never read books.
It's because I'm too busy looking at maps, Ash. Oh, man. But then we went to Colorado and visited Great Sand Dunes National Park. And everything with this pet peeve of mine kind of evaporated. Like, it just disappeared. This was a pet peeve I used to have. Okay. Because I would have said that Great Sand Dunes couldn't actually exist. It shouldn't be there. I would have thought that Great Sand Dunes National Park should have only existed in the imagination of some fantasy writer somewhere. I remember driving through it for the first time, pulling our trailer with our two little kids in the truck and thinking that what I was seeing was a mirage, that my eyes were pulling some kind of trick on me because it was just unrealistic. But as we got closer and closer, things became clearer. And pretty soon I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. I'd seen sand dunes before. I kind of knew what to expect from sand dunes, but this was impossible. I don't know if you had the same experience when you saw it the first time.
I definitely did not expect it to look the way it did.
Yeah. But it kind of cured me of my fantasy novel pet peeve in a way, because it really should be impossible. And the things that we're going to talk about today, if things were only slightly different in the natural world, these sand dunes wouldn't be here. Which is why I consider Great Sand Dunes National Park like fantasy nonfiction. And lucky for us, just like any good fantasy novel, this fantasy nonfiction place comes with a map, which is awesome. And we're going to talk about it. The map of Colorado.
Okay.
Colorado is basically split in two, right down the middle. On the east side, you have Kansas surplus, right?
True.
On the west side of Colorado is what everybody envisions in their mind. You know, sky high, big, beautiful mountains. Most people in the state live in the Kansas surplus side. Your brother lives there, and it's flat but beautiful, you know, because you can see the mountains in the distance.
Because you're including Denver?
Yes, that's Kansas surplus.
Because you're a little far from the mountains, even in Denver.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you're not including that with the prettier stuff in the mountains.
Yeah.
Okay.
Denver, Fort Collins, Pueblo, Colorado Springs, probably all they're on the east side, just on the east side of the mountains. They can see the mountains, but they're not in the mountains. From the Kansas-Colorado state line all the way to the center of the state, it's pretty flat. And then, boom, a line of mountains from north to south with peaks higher than just about everything else in the country. In the contiguous United States, there are 67 mountains that can be considered 14ers. Colorado has 53 of them.
53 of 67?
Yes.
And 14ers are peaks that are 14,000 feet or higher.
Right.
Just to...
53 of 67 is an incredible ratio.
Yeah.
California has 12 and Washington has 2. And so it's like, wow. It's nuts how many of the tallest peaks in the country are in Colorado. And so if you're looking at a map of Colorado or just picturing it in your head, just know that from that center point where the mountains start west, the whole rest of the state, all the way to Utah, is just covered in mountains. But the heart of the Rockies, where the tallest of the tall mountains reside, they follow the spine of the mountains. You start at the top, Rocky Mountain National Park. Boom. Big, beautiful mountains. And from there, the spine tracks south. Once you hit Denver, the spine starts to curve west, and the body of the mountains thickens out towards Aspen. But then the spine kind of comes back together and heads southeast towards Salida. But not long after, it splits. On the west side, you get a huge mass of super tall, rugged mountains all the way towards Telluride. Those are the San Juans, and they take up a huge portion of Colorado. You love the San Juans.
I love them so much. Yeah. I'm a sucker for big, craggly peaks, though.
I know. The $1 Million Highway is so pretty.
Yeah.
But that's the west side of the split. That's the San Juans. The east split is just as tall, and it's called the Sangre de Cristo. And those mountains are much more narrow. Unlike the San Juans, which are like a giant mass of mountains, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains form an incredibly tall but narrow eastern spine of the Rockies that curve east and head south into New Mexico. Now, this split is incredible, but right in the middle of the split is this huge valley, this giant valley the size of Connecticut. And that, my friends, is where we will spend today's episode of fantasy nonfiction. Because hidden between those two enormous mountain ranges, and I say hidden on purpose because if you approached this valley from either the west or the east, you would have no idea it was there. The mountains are just too tall and too foreboding. And there are so few gaps that would allow you to peek beyond the mountains. You wouldn't expect to find anything in between but layered mountains upon mountains, right?
Yeah.
You certainly wouldn't expect to find fun fact number 1. But somehow, hidden between some of the tallest mountains in the country, in an unlikely valley, you stumble upon fun fact number 1. Great Sand Dunes National Park, the tallest dunes in North America.
Yes.
The tallest dunes. And it totally makes sense. You're in a state with the tallest mountains basically in the country. And you get, of course, the dunes would be the tallest dunes in North America. It's insane.
What's insane too is they're right up against each other. So you can see both at the same time.
Right. Exactly. 14,000 foot peaks, just butting up right next to the dune field. It's incredible. And the dune field is huge. 30 square miles of the largest waves of sand in North America. It's awesome. But the contrast is probably what makes them seem so wild. The tall mountains and then like the yellow sand. And sometimes, and we even talked about in the exploring episode how like when it gets rain or when it gets snow, the color contrasts
like the
of
striations
the sand
on the sand are really cool.
I know.
And also, I'm sure you remember this. The last time we went, we were staying, thank goodness, in the lodge and not camping, but a huge storm came through.
Right.
And over those Sangre de Cristo mountains, like it was the most insane lightning I have ever seen in my entire life. It was like apocalyptic.
It was insane.
It was every like 2 seconds a new bolt was coming down, just like right over these huge mountains, right over the sand dunes. Like it was
for hours.
Yeah, it was insanity.
It was nonstop for hours. It was one of those storms that you just picture in like that's what you refer to as the storm.
Yeah.
We've never been the same since the storm.
It was insane, but just again, like that being in an area that was so sparsely populated and just so wild and rugged and extreme in so many ways.
Yeah.
Was, I don't know, watching that storm was like, it was shooting fear through me for sure, but it was also like, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And those dunes, the sand dunes, just to illustrate how tall they are, they're more than twice the size of the Statue of Liberty. Or if you've ever been to St. Louis and seen the skyline, the dunes are taller than the Gateway Arch in St. Louis. And so, I mean, they're just massive dunes.
Yeah.
And then you've got light and the lightning. We'll come back to the lightning later.
Okay.
But the lightning can play a pretty cool part in some of the things that happen in Great Sand Dunes National Park. And it doesn't have to do with Reese Witherspoon's movie with the lightning striking the beach and they get the glass.
Oh.
Did you ever,
No, I don't.
Sweet Home Alabama or whatever.
I haven't seen that movie for
Although
so
you
long.
can find those types of things in the sand dunes.
Interesting.
Which is pretty cool. But the tallest, back to the dunes, Ash, come on.
Sorry.
But the tallest of the dunes is Star Dune. And it rises about 750 feet from its base to its crest, which is huge. The second tallest is called Hidden Dune. And depending on the shifting sands, it can frequently be the tallest in the park at right about the same height, 750 feet from base to top. Third place, oddly enough, is called High Dune.
Yeah. It's a little misleading.
Yeah.
It is high, though.
It's really high.
It's not a bad name, per se. It's just not the tallest in the park. It's
699 feet tall. And some people maybe wonder, why is a dune that is shorter than Star Dune and Hidden Dune called High Dune? That's a good question. And it's because of the way that they measure dunes. It's like when Ash and I hug on the stairs.
John's a foot taller than me, for those of you who don't know.
High Dune is like Ash. Okay. It's shorter.
But I'm standing on a taller step.
Exactly. It's from base to summit. It's shorter, but its peak is higher than the other two.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's why. It's because of the way that they measure from base to summit, not actual sea level elevation.
Okay.
Right. So if Ash is standing 2 steps above me and I give her a hug, she's obviously taller, but everyone knows the truth. Obviously, these sand dunes are amazing and it's incredible to behold. And it's like, holy smokes, these are awesome. But why are they here and not somewhere else? Or why do they even exist in the first place? Because back to the fantasy nonfiction, all of these elements literally have to combine perfectly to make it happen. If just one element of the natural world changed, these sand dunes wouldn't be here. And I'll tell you right from the beginning, the origin story isn't without its mystery. There is a lot that we don't know. The main elements that we believe we understand are mountains, valley, wind, and water. Mm-hmm. The element that seems to elude us is time.
Okay.
But we'll get there. Let's start with the most basic things that we know. The sand. 70% of the sand in these dunes comes from the San Juans.
From the San Juans?
Uh-huh. Which doesn't make sense, right?
That's the wrong branch.
The wrong mountains.
Yeah.
It's the mountains on the west side, not the ones they're actually close to.
Okay.
Right? Now, the way we know that it's from the San Juans is because when we analyze the sand in the sand dunes, 70% of it is volcanic. And the San Juan Mountains are volcanic versus what the Sangre de Cristo Mountains are.
Okay.
They're but formed differently. Now, somewhere between 15 and 35 million years ago, this area was pounded by periods of violent activity, volcanic activity. Some of the largest explosions in world history happened here in the San Juans.
Okay.
And the result is that we have a huge patch of wild and rugged 14,000 feet tall mountains. The remaining 30% of sand is a bit of a mixture, but the majority of it comes from the Sangre de Cristo Mountains on the east side, the mountains they're actually close to. These mountains are not volcanic. They're tectonic. Tectonic forces pulling and stretching North America caused a fault line to form in the valley. And those tectonic forces stretched the land. And as it stretched, it caused the valley to drop and the Sangre de Cristo Mountains to rise to over 14,000 feet, which is amazing. Now, the dropping low valley is really important because over the millions of years that these huge, large mountains on both sides of the valley have been forming, they have also been eroding. Millions of years of wind and rain and snow and glaciers and all kinds of natural forces have gone to work on these mountains, tearing the massive peaks and pulling sand and sediments and all kinds of minerals down out of the mountains themselves. And it was the rivers and creeks that did most of the work of actually carrying the sand and sediments and minerals out of the mountains. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the lessons that we learned from the Great Basin episode that we did a long time ago at this point is that not every river reaches the ocean.
Okay.
Especially in situations like this, where the valley floor keeps dropping lower and lower as the mountains rise, because water likes to go to the easiest and lowest point it can, right? And after a while, the San Luis Valley became the lowest point in the area. And so you have all of these rivers and creeks draining into the San Luis Valley, dropping huge amounts of sediments from these mountains like the San Juans and the Sangre de Cristo into the valley bottom and creating a massive lake, Lake Alamosa.
Okay.
A name you probably recognize.
Just
Alamosa.
from the town, yeah.
Exactly. The largest city in the area. Well, another name you probably recognize is the name of a river that brought a huge amount of sediment into the valley. And honestly, I didn't realize this river had its headwaters here. I already thought that this was one of the coolest rivers in America. But now that I know that it has its headwaters deep in the heart of the San Juan Mountains, and it helped build Great Sand Dunes National Park, it's definitely on my list of top 3 in the country.
Wow.
The Rio Grande.
Okay.
America's sweetheart.
Is
The Rio Grande for sure.
America's sweetheart.
Exactly.
Even though it's half Mexico's.
Exactly. Water from 14,000 foot peaks in the San Juan country of Colorado then travels through the land of enchantment, New Mexico, turns east and meanders its way as the border between two countries all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Definitely a romantic journey, if you ask me.
I don't know about that. Interesting.
What a river. But like I said, not all rivers reach the ocean. And in its early years, the Rio Grande probably dead-ended in Lake Alamosa.
Okay.
Where it brought a huge percentage of the sand that built the Great Sand Dunes, because the sand, it comes right out of the San Juans. And so if the San Juans provide 70% of the sand,
the Rio Grande's bringing the sediments from the San Juans down to the valley.
Yeah.
And just depositing it there because it doesn't go any further.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, about 400 to 500,000 years ago, Lake Alamosa dried up. It looks like the lake got so high that it found an outlet and drained south, and kind of just as it gained momentum draining, it kind of built its own channel and carved probably somewhat into the channel that it goes through today.
Okay.
The Rio Grande's, the way that it flows today. Okay, now I said that time is the element we don't understand. Even on the NPS site now, you'll find somewhat contradictory information. Some say the dunes are only about 12,000 years old and formed during the ice ages. Some explanations say that they formed after Lake Alamosa dried up, which means the dunes have been here for about 400, 500,000 years. But they could also have been here much longer. And the evidence for that is fun fact number 2. Fun fact number 2 is that the dune field at Great Sand Dunes National Park only accounts for about 10% of the entire sand deposit in the area.
Oh, really?
Yes. People think that like the sand ends when the sand dunes end, but what they don't realize is that the surrounding the main dune field for miles and miles is an area called the sand sheet. And the sand sheet is hundreds of feet deep, and it's just sand.
Just sand from the San Juans.
Exactly. They've drilled all over the place in the sand sheet, and for hundreds of feet down, that's all they get is just sand. But the reason we don't see it is because it's all covered in grass.
Right.
It's the grasslands surrounding the dune field.
Interesting.
But the dune field is 30 square miles. And so if the dune field is 30 square miles and that's only 10% of the sand, that's just it's literally like the definition of the tip of an iceberg type of a situation, which is probably why I think that the dune field has got to be older than both of those time estimates. If you ask me, 12,000 years, holy smokes, that's young in geologic terms. Yeah. Even 400 to 500,000 years is young in geologic terms because of the way that everything builds up. because of the way that these dunes migrate. That's right. They actually travel, right? These dunes actually, the way that they work is they migrate. In the San Luis Valley, winds come out of the southwest and blow towards a low curve in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And as the wind blows, piles of sand build up into small dunes and they move along the valley floor until they finally merge into the main dune field.
Okay.
And the lake doesn't have to be all the way dried up for that to happen.
Is it though?
Is the lake dried?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally gone.
Oh, okay.
It's been gone for 400, 500,000 years.
Okay.
And so all you have to really have is a couple of dry years. We live near the Great Salt Lake and it's kind of drying out. And as the lake dries, you get all of this sand that builds up and blows into town, right?
Right.
And that's what a lot of people are complaining about is the Great Salt Lake dries up.
Right.
And so a few dry years here and there, and you can build up dunes that then start to migrate across the valley. Mm-hmm. And so, but estimates for time are all over the place. They haven't found a way of precisely dating sand, really. They just know that they somehow... They know that they have to be based on where the sand came from. So if the San Juans were made 35 million years ago, they have to be at least younger than that.
Okay.
Kind of a thing. But it kind of, in some ways, it doesn't even matter to me like what the time frame is because each idea is super cool in its own way. Like imagine if they were 12,000 years old.
Have to be a really fast migration.
That'd be a catastrophic situation.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the changes that would be happening? The mountains would go through catastrophic erosion.
Right.
In order to build up from the ice ages during that time frame. It would just be one of the fastest changing landscapes on the planet. Mm-hmm. In order to build up this massive 30 square mile dune field, plus all of the sand sheet,
right.
Be tearing out those mountains so fast.
That seems like that might not be the answer.
I think so too, but it's still cool to imagine.
It is.
Or the Lake Alamosa dried up version, where all of a sudden you have this giant dry lake bed of sand. Could you imagine the sandstorms this valley would have experienced? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
It'd be worse than hiking High Dune. That's for sure.
Oh man. It would be that first few thousand years after the lake dried up would have been intense.
But maybe that's why nobody ever really lived there.
Yeah, I think that could be true. Oh my gosh. It'd be like all of what is it? When in The Mummy, when you have those sand storms that come through, you can't see anything.
Yeah.
It would have been like that all the time in this valley for thousands of years as the dunes migrated and headed towards the Sangre de Cristo Mountains.
Yeah.
Or the longer time frame where Great Sand Dunes is truly the perfect example of the New Testament call to faith, where it's like Jesus tells his disciples, "Truly I tell you, if you have the faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move because nothing's impossible for you," mm-hmm. right? Because each grain of sand is the size of a mustard seed, and they literally became mountains of sand.
Right.
That moved from here to there. It's a huge miracle, because where the mountains, the tallest sand dunes in North America, moved from one place to another. Wow. Crazy. Cool. And it's still happening today. Wind from the southwest blowing across the valley, creating and moving migrating dunes that one day join the main body of the dune field.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't really care about the timing. I think they're all cool. The problem, though, is that none of these origin stories make them the tallest dunes in North America. You just end up with a pile of sand. Mm-hmm. Why are they the tallest? Ash, do you have the answer?
Because no, I don't have the answer. But what I keep thinking is that they're kind of backed into a corner.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So where they're getting migrated to, they can't move any further at some point. And so then my guess was they have to start growing up.
Some of what you said is absolutely on point.
Okay.
Because the wind is blowing from the southwest and it's just
straight into this little nook at the base of the Sangre de Cristo.
Exactly.
Mountains.
There is a little bit of a nook.
Yeah.
And where it's pushing, Madano Pass is like one of those main passes that is where the wind is really pushing all of this sand.
Uh-huh.
The problem in your theory is that over hundreds of thousands of years, wind from one direction could totally push all of that sand up and over. You're right that it's coming from the southwest. The wind is correct. The nook is correct. But it's not just that it's pushed into a nook.
Well, because there's wind coming off the mountains
exactly
from that side too. So
exactly.
I know there's other forces at play for sure.
Exactly. There's storm winds, that storm you mentioned earlier, like with the lightning that was crazy. There are some big storms that come through here. And these mountains kind of, because they're so tall, a lot of times tall mountains sort of create their own weather.
Yeah.
And these 14,000 foot peaks, they create weather that blows from the northeast back into the sand
valley.
dunes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is the Sangre de Cristo Mountains force the sand back onto itself. The two opposing winds forcing the sand and dunes repeatedly back onto themselves is what makes them taller and taller.
So you end up kind of having like a vortex type experience in this little area where it's like you have the sand being pushed in, but once it like reaches the point where those storm winds start coming into play more too, then it probably just kind of keeps it all right there.
Exactly.
Because they're fighting against each other for the direction
right.
that the sand needs to go.
Exactly. But like you said, you kind of keeps it all together fighting. One thing that really makes it cool is the addition of water. Because you have the winds forcing the sand to battle itself, basically. But the addition of water is really what makes it a cage match. And if you've ever watched the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, there's this awesome scene where Peter Parker tests his strength in like a WWE wrestling match.
Yeah.
And his opponent is a guy named Bonesaw McGraw. And if Peter can last 3 minutes in the cage with Bonesaw, then he gets paid $3,000. Well, adding water to this battle of winds and sand is like when they lower the cage over Spider-Man and Bonesaw. And then one of my favorite lines from the movie, Bonesaw tells Spider-Man, "Hey, freak show, you're going nowhere. I've got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime," you know? Because the water, it keeps the sand from escaping even more than just opposing winds ever could.
Okay.
Because in reality, both winds aren't blowing at the same time. If one wind blows without the other, sand is bound to escape.
Right.
Right? But not when water makes it a cage match. On the eastern side of the dunes, water flowing out of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains gathers into two creeks, Sand Creek and Madano Creek. Sand Creek flows north, Madano Creek flows south, and then both of them turn west like two arms hugging the edge of the dune field.
Interesting. Okay.
And what these creeks do, in essence, is catch any sand that tries to escape the dune field, and then it recycles it back into the dunes itself. Because we talked about this in the exploring episode when I said that I was really glad I was taller than all of you.
Right.
Because the sand doesn't blow like hundreds of feet in the air all the time. Most of the sand only gets a few feet off the dunes.
Right.
And so as the wind is blowing it to the edge of the dunes, if it's only a couple feet off, then most of it's going to land in the creek.
Right.
Okay. And that's going to recycle it back into the dunes itself. And it's amazing how perfect this system works. It could not be designed more perfectly because the southwest winds blow more frequently. The northeast winds are strong but infrequent. And so most sand would naturally escape through the east side since the wind is blowing in that direction more often. Well, by having the creeks flowing from the east, thanks to these mountains that create this nook.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And then the creeks, they don't just flow away from the dunes. They actually like hug the dune field. And so all the sand escaping at the end of the dunes is then put back at the beginning of the dune building process, where it then creates small migrating dunes that end up back in the main dune field.
Cool.
Oh,
That's really cool.
It's really cool. But also, Madonna Creek and Sand Creek, when they reach that west side, they disappear.
Oh, really?
At least Madonna Creek disappears. Sand Creek sometimes can get really shallow. But if it mostly just like disappears into the sand, then every single sand particle that falls into the creek
stays right there and gets recycled back.
Is fully recycled back into the system.
Yeah. Okay.
You couldn't design it better than this.
Yeah.
And in addition to being really important to the sand system, these creeks also exhibit a really rare and amazing natural phenomenon. Surge flow. Water can only carry so much sand. And so just like wind, it will carry sand for a minute, but then if the wind slows down for just a second, it'll drop it somewhere else, right?
Is this what we were talking about when I said Madonna Creek has like weird surges?
Uh-huh.
Oh, obviously it's a real thing, but I was like, am I imagining this?
You are not. It is a very rare phenomenon. When wind does this, where it picks up sand and drops it into certain places, it kind of creates dunes. When water does it, it looks kind of like the ocean floor. It looks like, when you look at the bottom of the ocean, you kind of see the ripples at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Well, here at Great Sand Dunes, in the creeks, there is so much sand that water can only hold so much. And so if it slows down even a little bit, it's always picking up and dropping sand. And these little ripples that it creates as part of this, they get so big that they actually create their own little dams in the creek. Mm-hmm. Well, when the water pressure becomes too great, the dams break and you get surge flow. It's like little tiny flash floods or mini tsunamis. Mm-hmm. Well, there is so much sand and so many of these mini dams that form and break that these creeks send down a mini tidal wave about every 20 seconds.
Yeah. And that's what you'll notice when you're playing in Madonna Creek, if you time it right. Mm-hmm. Which we talked about was usually like around the end of May. Uh-huh. But yeah, and if you don't pay attention, you might not notice because the water doesn't completely stop flowing. Right. But like we would be playing in it and I'd look down and I'd be like, there's not very much water coming down right now. Uh-huh. And then it would just start flowing again. Right. And then it would kind of recede and stop, and then it would start again. And I was just like, this is like no creek that I've ever played in. Like, what is going on? Uh-huh. It's really cool. And they have timed it. It averages like every 20 seconds. Yeah. So when you're playing in it, notice that because it's pretty crazy to just watch. And I would say it probably was about every 20 seconds. I mean, it is often enough that you might not notice. But if you really pay attention, it really is crazy that like the water stops flowing for a minute. Exactly. It's so cool. And this kind of this relates right into fun fact number 3, because a lot of the times when we go and we're swimming and we're enjoying it kind of later in the season, the waves are only like 2 to 3 inches tall. Yeah. Is what it looks like. But fun fact number 3 is that in really wet years, surge flow waves on Madonna Creek can be between 12 and 20 inches tall. Which is why you'll see pictures of people in like tubes. Exactly. On the creek. Yeah, it gets deep enough that it could actually be like you can float down the creek through the dunes. It's like when you're in one of those wave pools. Yeah. At the whatever water place you're at. Water park? Is that the word we're going That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, water park. A wave pool at a water place, Oh my gosh. But yeah, could you imagine every 20 seconds, a 12 to 20 inch wave smashing you down I would just sit in my tube and with my drink and just ride it until it recedes and then just ride it again when it comes back. Like that would be such a fun afternoon. That would be a blast. And just let it take me through the dunes. And then when I'm done, get up and walk out of there and go start at the top again.
I know. That would be so much fun. But we usually get there a little later. But also, if you're there when it's that high, the water is probably freezing because it's straight from the snow.
We've been there earlier and later than peak. We don't usually go during like the exact peak dates.
Right.
That Madonna Creek is the most popular. And it's busy enough a little bit before, a little bit after. So I'm just, because I'm allergic to crowds, I'm like, man, I just don't know if I can do full peak. But now that I know, maybe we will have to wait for a really good snowpack year and just brave the crowds and go and float my tube down the creek.
And then we'll cruise down the river.
Pretty fun. Yeah.
That would be a blast. Oh my gosh.
Not this year. This year is not the year for good snowpack. So
no, it's
we'll
not.
have to keep watching.
But that's kind of like that. That's how the whole system works, to kind of bring it back to the sand dunes for a second. The whole system, it's incredible. All of the elements, including the creeks, they had to be perfect to make the landscape happen. Mm-hmm. The mountains, the valley, the winds, the water, time. If you adjust any of those items, these dunes easily might not be here. And I would still be spending my time criticizing fantasy storybook maps.
Yeah. What a shame.
Yeah. If the San Juans weren't volcanic, if the valley didn't drop, if the Sangre de Cristo Mountains were shorter, if the winds went a different direction, if the Rio Grande didn't dead end in the valley for a while, if the creek didn't wrap around those sand dunes, as much as they do, any variation or any of the variables could easily result in this place not being here. And I would have been right that this place shouldn't exist.
Ah, so cool.
I know, but I don't know. I think the world sometimes is way cooler than we realize.
For sure, because how many times have we been to Great Sand Dunes without me understanding how perfect a recipe you need?
Right.
To have what you have in front of you.
Exactly. I know, you go, you see the dunes, you sled down them, you hike up them, you play in the water, and you take off without even appreciating the fact that this place is like you're experiencing true fantasy nonfiction.
Yeah.
Because it could easily not be here. I definitely am guilty of taking it for granted.
So question, isn't it called fantasy fiction?
Yes.
Not nonfiction?
You've been thinking about this whole time, haven't you? Yeah.
It's not nonfiction.
I don't know if I invented the term, but I may have. Fantasy nonfiction, because nonfiction means true, right?
Right.
And fantasy is like imagination. So it's like imagination truth.
Okay.
This place is like fantasy nonfiction.
Imagination truth.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Okay.
True imagination.
Okay.
That's
okay. I'm this whole time I'm thinking, I don't think that's real. I've never heard of fantasy nonfiction before.
I could have probably gone with like a sci-fi nonfiction, maybe.
I don't know that still makes sense.
Yeah.
It's fine. I just wanted to, put my concern out there.
Yeah, I think it's a good concern. I think the point that fantasy nonfiction that I'm trying to convey with that title is like reality is sometimes the truth is more cool than the legend.
Than what you could have made up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Truth is cooler than legend or myth.
Okay.
In some situations.
I'll accept it.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting that. Appreciate it. But since I brought up sci-fi for a second, we've been talking about fantasy, science fiction, science nonfiction fiction.
Nobody says that.
Nobody says that. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's true. It couldn't have worked. Okay, but we can't go through talking about Great Sand Dunes without mentioning one of the greatest sci-fi movies of the last 10 years.
Okay.
Dune.
Which I've not seen.
I know you haven't seen.
Nor read. Someone tried to get me to read it, and I was like, nobody has that much time.
The movie is really good, though. I think we should watch it.
Yeah, I probably should.
But you missed it on the big screen.
I'm not against it by any means. I just haven't seen it.
You just didn't see it.
It just has flown by my radar.
I went with one of my buddies. That's why you didn't see it with me.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. But in the movie Dune, most of the story happens on the desert planet of Arrakis, which is special because Arrakis is home to the universe's most valuable and essential resources. They call it spice. And so the whole universe depends on harvesting this spice, and Arrakis is the only place in the universe that has it. And it allows them to like power a lot of things, but also do interstellar travel.
Okay.
So really important. But you can't really mine the spice. It's not like silver or gold where you have a mine and you dig into the earth and get it. You have to harvest it from the sand. You can kind of tell the spice apart from the sand because it shimmers a little bit differently and it has more of a cinnamon color. Well, if you hike around the dunes at Great Sand Dunes, you'll notice something that blows around with the sand just like on Arrakis. It kind of swirls around on top, shimmers a little bit differently, and if enough of it gathers together, it can appear in stripes or veins of black across the dunes. Now, what is amazing about this substance that looks like black sand is that it is naturally magnetic.
Okay.
And it's not sand, it's a kind of iron-bearing mineral called magnetite. And magnetite is slightly more dense than sand. And so the wind acts like a natural filter that separates it out from the sand. And if you got disoriented in the dunes, this magnetite could actually become a real problem because of fun fact number 4. Fun fact number 4 is that the magnetic charge of a large vein of magnetite is strong enough to confuse a compass, especially following a thunderstorm, because it can basically get supercharged by lightning.
That feels kind of scary. Which is why I was glad we weren't on the sand during that lightning storm.
Yes, the sand is a dangerous place to be during thunderstorms.
Yeah.
Because there's no trees, you're standing on top
Very
of stuff.
Exposed, yeah.
Yeah. But
then you add magnetite, apparently, which can get supercharged by lightning.
It's pretty harmless.
Yikes.
It's not going to hurt it's not going to shock you or anything like that. But like in some movies or TV shows like Stranger Things or War Machine, where sometimes you like start walking and you look at your compass and the compass is just spinning and going crazy because of electromagnetic interference or something, that can actually happen. And it can happen here at Great Sand Dunes National Park, which is science nonfiction.
Science nonfiction.
Science fiction nonfiction. Yeah. Which is really cool. Now, granted, if you ever got lost in Great Sand Dunes, you wouldn't even need a compass because you can just look at the mountains and you know where you are.
Right.
But that's not the point. Getting lost isn't the point. The point is, this is just another example of how this place brings something to life that I thought was only in some author or writer's imagination.
Yeah.
This place just, it's unbelievable in so many cool ways, which is so fun. And it just makes me wonder what else is possible that I didn't think was possible. What else have I been skeptical about or suspicious about or worse, cynical about that actually is real? And I don't know, it just makes me love this place so much. It makes me want to be less certain of the impossible and push the limits of the possible. Great Sand Dunes is a really special place, which is going to lead us directly into fun fact number 5. Fun fact number 5 is that twice in 100 years, people came together to save Great Sand Dunes National Park from things that would have destroyed it.
Okay.
Twice.
I love these stories.
Because if we, like, the purpose of this episode is to help people appreciate how special this place is. And twice in the history of this park, people have had to save it from things because they loved it so much. They wanted to protect it because they appreciate it and realize this is a unique landscape that shouldn't be here. And if we change anything, it might not be here.
Right.
So It just reminds me of that scene from The Incredibles where Mr. Incredible is like getting interviewed by a journalist and he says, no matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. Right. Sometimes I just want it to stay saved, just for a little bit. All right. Now, if I was to give the human race a compliment sandwich, have you ever?
Yeah.
I remember learning, give people compliment sandwiches. Ash, what is a compliment sandwich?
It's where you say something nice. That's your piece of bread. And then you say something mean in between another nice thing that you say, which is the other piece of bread.
It's basically a way to like convey a little bit of criticism, but try to do it in a nice way.
So you say it nice. You say something nice, then you say something mean, then you say something nice so that they maybe forget that you were mean.
Exactly. It's like the Mary Poppins idea that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? If I was to give humanity a compliment sandwich, it would probably go something like this. Humans, you are great at using the resources around you to improve your life, but we need to be more proactive. We're super reactionary, meaning we usually solve problems after they happen, not before they happen. But when we do fix a problem, it usually stays fixed for a while. So good job. But if you could work on that proactive piece, that would be great.
I feel like you could have been meaner.
I could have been meaner. How would you make that
John
meaner?
gives really nice compliment sandwiches.
All right.
Humans, you're really good at using the resources that you have to better your lives. But you also ruin things a lot by using those resources too much or not in responsible ways.
Yes.
So good job being resourceful. Done.
Nailed it. I'm not sure what type of food we ended up with there, but that's basically the message. Oh my gosh. And humanity, we're really good at finding ways to use the resources around us, but sometimes to our own detriment.
Right.
Right. And Great Sand Dunes is a perfect example of that. And Great Sand Dunes has a really long and cool human history. I mean, from the native people that have been here for thousands of years to the Spanish American explorers, mountain men, prospectors, homesteaders and ranchers, buffalo soldiers. I mean, Great Sand Dunes has been involved in so many cool chapters of American history. But the complement of using resources has hurt us sometimes. And one of the most iconic periods of time in American history where humans were like, natural resources, yes, was the story of gold in America, right? Yeah. When gold was discovered in California in 1848, it prompted the gold rush in 1849, which was one of the largest mass migrations in American history, right? And then after California, as we've talked about on this podcast, prospectors and opportunists spread all across the American continent.
Well, I mean, most of Colorado is mine towns.
Exactly. Leadville.
Yeah.
All these places.
All these places in these mountains tucked around are from prospectors.
Exactly. Well, in the 1920s, gold was discovered in the sand here at Great Sand Dunes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And lots of it.
Gold?
Gold.
In the sand.
In the sand.
Okay.
Local newspapers wrote articles all about it. Everybody was so excited. One miner's daughter recalls her father finding an ounce of gold for every 4 cubic yards of sand, which is a ton of gold. It's so much money. And mining operations popped up all along Madonna Creek. There was even a gold mill that was built on Madonna Creek designed to recover gold from the sand, just like instantly.
How did I not know this? I've not heard one little inkling of information about this.
Probably because they're trying to hide it. Because who knows how much gold is still in them hills, you know? I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But the operation was pretty big. It was a big deal and there was a lot going on. And like I said, humans are great at making use of the resources around us. Well, these prospectors were spending so much time and energy sifting through the water and the sand that pretty soon they realized something. There's ways we can use the water and the sand too. And so pretty soon they started diverting the water and using it in other places. And then they also started trucking off the sand for construction and to make concrete. Plus, they were also chemically removing gold from the sand too, not just old-fashioned panning for gold. And Great Sand Dunes was quickly becoming Colorado's most famous gravel pit.
Interesting.
Well, not everybody was okay with this. Many of the locals loved the dunes and wanted to protect them. The local Chamber of Commerce actually worked for 5 years to try to protect the dunes from development. It wasn't until the local women's organization called the PEO, the Philanthropic Educational Organization, stepped up that things finally started gaining momentum.
Nice.
One local chapter got all of the other local chapters in the San Luis Valley involved. Then, once they were all united, they got the Colorado chapter involved. And once they were statewide, they decided it was time to go national, and they lobbied for Great Sand Dunes to gain national monument status. And finally, after countless letters and meetings, dinners, and tours of the sand dunes themselves, in 1932, President Hoover signed a declaration making Great Sand Dunes a national monument.
Nice.
Protecting it for years and for generations to come. But...
And then...
like Mr. Incredible said earlier, no matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. In the 1980s and the 90s, Great Sand Dunes once again fell back into danger. Not from gold this time. The danger this time was water. Water development companies had planned a project to pump groundwater from just outside the park boundaries, which they could sell to communities like Denver or Colorado Springs, where they were growing incredibly fast. Well, a lot of people might think to themselves, well, what's the matter with that? Well, natural systems don't often work within the boundaries of humans.
Right. They don't care about the park boundary.
Exactly. The park boundary is just an arbitrary line that we drew on the map somewhere.
Right.
You know, the aquifer of water underneath Great Sand Dunes is no exception. There is a huge aquifer of water underneath the dunes, and the water table of that aquifer is super close to the surface. Well, so then what's the problem with pumping water out of Great Sand Dunes? If there's tons of water, if even the water table is so high, there's lots of extra water, right? Wrong. Because it turns out that the only reason that Madonna Creek and Sand Creek flow across the surface of the sand dunes or right along the edge, picking up escaping sand, is because the water table is at the surface.
Right.
The reason those creeks disappear on the west of the dune field, where the sand is recycled back into the dunes, is because that is where the water table drops off.
Okay.
And so if you pump water out of the aquifer and you drop the water table even just a little bit, those creeks will disappear underground, and the sand recycling system that keeps the sand from escaping will cease to exist, along with the Great Sand Dunes as we know them today. And so these water development projects were a massive existential threat to Great Sand Dunes. Well, once again, the local residents joined hands in an effort to save this precious landmark. And in the year 2000, Congress passed legislation authorizing the purchase of land from water developers. And in that same authorization that Congress passed, it also authorized expansion of the Great Sand Dunes into a national park that was 4 times the size of the original monument. And in 2004, it all came true.
For reals?
Yep.
Not that long ago.
Really recently, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool, but it just kind of shows, like, a lot of times we go to these places, like we go to Great Sand Dunes, we think it's been here for forever.
Yeah.
Obviously it's been protected for centuries. Nope.
20 years.
20 years as a national park. But they also, because they recognize this system problem that we have, if we mess up the system, we screw up the whole process, right? Mm-hmm. And so in addition to making the national park 4 times larger, they also set up a wildlife preserve around the park, and 42,000 acres of Forest Service land was transferred into the management of the national park system too.
Okay.
Which is why today on the map, and on the website and any official park documents, it's called Great Sand Dunes National Park and
Preserve.
And Preserve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Because people came together, they saw a problem, they fixed it. And we're going to have to do it again in the future, I'm sure, because that's just how humans are. Yeah. We're so good at creating problems for ourselves. But then we fix it for a while, but then we get another problem for ourselves. But it's just a testament, the fact that people love this place so much. You know, we had to save it twice, and we're going to continue saving it. And we kind of have to do the same thing, you know, with all the parks.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of things going on right now that in the national parks that could use our voices. So
yeah, it's
honestly,
true.
You know, look up your favorite parks and kind of see what's going on, see what you can do. I don't know if you know this about us, but we donate a lot of money to the nonprofits that work with the national parks because it matters. It matters so much. You know, they need voices, they need money, they need support, so that we can take care of these beautiful places.
Exactly. And so I thought for the task for today that all we just want to do is encourage people to, for your favorite national parks, figure out who the specific nonprofit it is that national park partners with, that they work with to do different projects and things like that. You know, you don't have to donate to them or anything like that, but you could just like them on social media, figure out what they're doing, what they're up to, what they say about what's going on in the parks. And just maybe that's a great way to kind of inform yourself about what's going on in one of the places that matters most to you.
Yeah. And if you like this episode, please leave us a 5-star review. We would love to hear from you. And if you do find a nonprofit that you want to follow, go ahead and let us know on our social pages too at Dirtinmyshoes. I would love to hear about the different nonprofits and the different parks that are special to you. And yeah, just let us know what you find. We follow along really closely with those nonprofit organizations. So I'm going to see, we're all in the club together, which is really cool. So thanks for listening today. I hope that you have an amazing time in Great Sand Dunes, or that you just enjoyed listening and learning about this national park so that you can add it to your bucket list.